When did the SEC first start to focus its resources maybe on making the conference a basketball powerhouse? Was there, a moment where you said, why don't we just take the headlines in other months?
Well, yeah, I can speak to when it became really raw for me, and it was March of 2016. That was the end of my first basketball season as the SEC's commissioner, and we had three teams selected to the NCAA tournament on the men's side. Dan, that was the fourth time that had happened in the prior 10 years. So it's not like we had a great trend going, but when you're in the commissioner's chair, that moment was pretty raw. And we had to do some things differently from our end in the conference office.
Okay, but what was the plan that you put in place?
Yeah, a couple things. One, we had some consulting relationships where we really weren't talking about the right things. You remember the old RPI, which is now the net? We would spend an inordinate amount of time trying to figure out how to game the RPI and scheduling. We weren't talking about hiring the right people. We weren't talking about facilities. We weren't talking about recruiting. The day after that selection Sunday, I transitioned away from one advisor and I brought Mike Tranghese in the next day. And what Mike did is help us talk about the right things. The other bonus with Tranghese, and I grew up outside Syracuse, New York, so watched the Big East form, was like when Mike said you're good at basketball to the media, you were automatically good at basketball. But one of the things he did was he talked to our ADs as they were going through the hiring of coaches and not tell them who to hire, but talk to them about perhaps who not to hire, who may not be ready for the stage that we have. Those kind of conversations became much more relevant. We had some other tweaks that we needed to make, but that was a big part of the conversation.
Did you take the same approach to football at any point where you guys have been successful winning titles, but now with more teams in the playoffs, and is there a shift in philosophy?
The reality of this job, and a long time ago, I was Southland Conference Commissioner. I was like way off Broadway. You never called me for an interview, so I never had the opportunity. I made a decision that every day in that role, you had to think about football one way or another. And I think the reality of the Southeastern Conference is football is dominant on a daily basis. We have 21 other sports, but we also have to recognize the conversation allocation, the time allocation. So football's a bit more natural. Do we talk about issues? Absolutely. We're talking about scheduling in the conference. We talk about non-conference scheduling. We talk about CFP impacts. That's daily. We had to be a little bit more intentional on the basketball front 10 years ago.